So hello, everyone. We're right at the top of the hour. Let's go ahead and begin. So I want to say welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this Sunday evening or perhaps even Sunday afternoon where you are. And I want to welcome you to the Institute for Global Transformation's webinar series, where it's really our pleasure to put together and bring to you some of the extraordinary work and knowledge and expertise of our partners, as well as change makers, with the aim to carry forth the mission and vision of IFGT, which is about supporting you in transforming your life, achieving your goals, and becoming the best you. My name is Denise Edmond. I am the corporate secretary for the Institute for Global Transformation and also part of the leadership team. And it's my pleasure to bring you to you today the webinar, Discover Your Life Purpose with Henry Shelton, who, by the way, is also a member of our IFGT team. So it's a pleasure for us to give this space over to Henry today. I'm actually going to share with you a little bit about Henry's background in a few minutes, but first I just want to take care of a few housekeeping items. You will have noticed when you first entered the webinar that we're using the traditional webinar format where participants' audio is automatically muted and your video is automatically disabled. However, we will have a Q&A session towards the end of Henry's presentation. And during that Q&A session, please feel free to share any questions you have or any interaction you may want to have with Henry. We ask that you hold off until that point in time. When Henry is ready to take Q&A, definitely feel free to do that. There are a couple of ways that you can do that. If you prefer to type your question or your comment to Henry, you can either use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. If you toggle your mouse over the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat feature. Or you can also use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to type in a question. Alternatively, if you'd like to engage with Henry live, you'd like to ask your question or engage in some interaction with Henry live, you can use the feature at the bottom of your screen that's called Raise Hand. Once you do that, Henry will be notified. He'll identify you, and I think you'll actually receive a prompt from your end of the screen to confirm that you do want to unmute your audio so you can interact directly with Henry live during that Q&A session. So just wanted to take care of a little bit of that housekeeping in terms of Q&A and interaction with Henry. I'll be supporting Henry with watching all three of those, the chat box, the Q&A functionality, and the raise hand. So we'll just make sure that no one slips in between the cracks if they do want to engage with Henry during that time. So with that said, let me give you a little bit of background of Henry's. So in addition to having 20 years of experience as a professional trainer, consultant, and business coach, Henry has also been a student and instructor of mystical and metaphysical studies for over 20 years, which is what brings him here today for this webinar of Discovering Your Life Purpose. He's also an accomplished entrepreneur with over 20 years in the information technology industry, including a biomedical engineering background where he installed and maintained some of the very first MRI systems in the U.S., along with other state-of-the-art heart diagnostic systems, X-ray, CAT scan, and other imaging types of systems. Early in Henry's career, his business was awarded Business of the Year from a Dallas-based Chamber of Commerce, and he and his business partner went on to generate millions in revenue, employ many people in the field of IT, and even secured notable clients during that term to include people with the likes of Ron Kirk, who's the former mayor of Dallas and also former U.S. trade representative to President Obama. Other notable clients include JCPenney, the state of Texas, city of Dallas, Texas Instruments, and many others. Henry's going to share a lot more about himself during the webinar, so feel free, as I mentioned, to ask questions and interact with Henry. If you do have any questions post the webinar, you can go to www.henryshelton.com. So with that, I am going to disappear and hand over the space to Henry.
Okay, well, thank you, Denise, for that gracious introduction. In addition, I want to say thank you to Marianne Miller, and the board for the Institute for Global Transformation for, one, inviting me to be a part of the board of the core team, and two, for inviting me to do this webinar tonight. And good evening to everyone else, and welcome to all of you for joining with us this evening on this webinar, whose topic is Discover Your Life's Purpose, the key to achieving your highest human potential. So if you're on this webinar right now, it is, I believe, because of your desire to explore a different approach to what we have come to call our life's work and our career. In other words, you're here to discover the true purpose of your life beyond your current situation. In fact, I like to take it one step further and say you are searching for your soul's purpose in this lifetime. So the real question for this evening is there something special that you came into this life to accomplish beyond your current situation? Now, that situation could be disenchantment with the daily grind of a job that is unfulfilling and stressful, allowing you just to earn just enough to get by and pay the bills. Or you could be at a potential midlife decision point, whereas you're considering your next path forward. Or as Marianne said to me in an early conversation, perhaps you're just gaining potential confirmation that you made the right decision in your current place of fulfillment. So again, is there some significant purpose that you are uniquely designed to accomplish or to contribute to humanity and our evolving world? Well, I believe the answer to that question is a resounding yes. As a matter of fact, this actually goes beyond belief for me, and I'm quite comfortable and confident in saying that we each have a specific purpose that we came into this life to realize. Each of our purposes will necessarily be somewhat different. However, some of them will surely intersect and bring many of us together in order to realize a common purpose. So before we jump deeper into this specific topic of purpose, allow me to share a bit about how this journey down the life purpose path began for me. But first, even before we do that, I'd like for us to do I'd like for you to join with me in a centering exercise. This is something I do before I typically give talks, particularly online. So I'm going to do a chant followed by an invocation, and I'm going to read a lead-in preference to give some perspective on the evening's topic. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to share my screen with you, and then I'm going to go off video. So let me work through that process so that you'll have in front of you the necessary wording once I start the chant. Let's go ahead and center ourselves. I'm going to intone the vowel sound OM 7 times. If you want, you can join along with me. You can do it silently, or you could do it out loud or silently, depending on your current circumstance. So, and then I'm going to go into the invocation right after that. So let's go ahead and get started. Inhale, take a deep breath.
From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of humanity. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of humanity. May the Christ consciousness return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of humanity, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love, power and purpose restore the plan on earth. The purpose of our planet, the goal to which all organized systems must cooperate, is to manifest and improve life. The cause of stagnation, degeneration, conflict, and destruction in man-made systems is that man resists or creates opposition to natural equilibrium and progressive unfoldment. Now I'm gonna bring my video back up and we're gonna jump right into the presentation. So there we go. All right, so tonight we're going to explore the what, the why, and the how of discovering your life's purpose. I'm going to share with you how I came upon this path of life work and why it's important to me. And I'll tell you a little bit about my personal journey to ancient Egypt up to and to the discovery of the archetypes. I'll discuss what this means and how it applies to you. And I'll introduce you to the association of what I call 3 primary inner gifts. And I'll talk to you about a method to connect these to your passion, your purpose, and ultimately your calling and your voice. And this will ultimately lead to what I term your aha moment. And near the end of the presentation, I'll offer you an opportunity to explore this process beyond this webinar. So as I said, this journey for me began in Egypt back in 2011. I had the opportunity to go over there with the group, and during the time we were there, I had studied a little bit about Egypt, read about the so-called gods and goddesses, looked at some of the hieroglyphs, of course, fascinated with the Great Pyramid of Giza. But when I got there and in about a week into the journey, something struck me. And
what occurred to me was, and I'm excuse that I'm going to bring up my laser here too. Something occurred to me. Every temple we went inside of, on all the walls, whether it was a temple, whether there were obelisks, whether there were other structures, and all the monoliths had inscribed in them these pictographs. And many of you on the call know these to be basically what we call hieroglyphs. And so after about 7-8 days into the journey, about maybe 10 days, we were going into temple after temple, monolith after monolith, and on all the columns, on all the stelae, on all the obelisks were inscribed these pictographs, pictures of individuals, what appeared to be at that time cryptic writing, which we refer to as the hieroglyphs. So when I left Egypt, I came back to the States, and frankly, I was overwhelmed by the number of hieroglyphs and the number. So I came back asking myself, who were these people and why were they going through the meticulous length of inscribing on the walls, temple after temple, these beautiful and meticulous inscribed carvings? And what were they all about? Why would somebody go through this? I mean, this is just overwhelmingly too many, not thousands, but tens of thousands. And how did they construct a monolith called the Giza pyramid that to this day no one else has been able to replicate? What did they know that we didn't know? So I came back to the States, and I proceeded on this journey of discovery. And bear with me, I'm playing with the laser pointer. So I came back and began to try to get some answers to this question of what were these hieroglyphs about? What were these gods about? Who were these people? And what was revealed to me was, why were they worshiping so many gods? But it turns out, contrary to modern day thinking, the ancient Egyptian religion was not a polytheistic religion, but instead they worship a single God whose various attributes were known to the Egyptians as Neteru. The Neteru symbolized the divine energies, attributes, powers, forces, and qualities that through their actions and interactions, the Egyptians believed created the universe and maintained the universe. Now, Neteru in its singular form translates to the word neter. Latinized, neter became natura, and then anglicized, natura became the modern day word that we know of as nature. And the word hieroglyphs turned out to be called by the Egyptians Medu Neters, and Medu meaning sacred or sacred writings or inscriptions of nature. So the Neteru and their functions were later acknowledged by others as angels and archangels. So they went these inscriptions of nature, these symbols of nature, later took on the form and name of angels and archangels, such as the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy, as it was found in the cave in Qumran near the Dead Sea, which mentions the words gods in its plural. It says, "Rejoice, O heavens, with him, and do obeisance to him, ye gods." So this is in the Bible. When the passage is quoted in the New Testament, the words gods is substituted with the angels of God. So it turns out even the name of the country, Egypt, had inscribed in it and encoded in it an ideal of what was going on in that country. Most Egyptologists and lay people know that Egypt is derived from the Greek word Aegyptos, but few have ever traced the origins of the word. Aegyptos is a contraction of the Greek term Hygieiptos, and Hygieiptos was a Greek transliteration of the term Het Ka. Het meaning place, and Ka is the physical projection of the soul. So the term Het Kapta meant the place of the projection of the principles of Ptah, or the place where the projections of Ptah manifested. Now, who is this Ptah, you asking? Ptah is an Egyptian creator god who, according to the Egyptians, existed before all other things, and by his will thought the universe into existence. The Egyptians believed that being was first conceived by thought and then realized by the word, or the vibrations, or the ideals. So the land of Egypt was seen and understood as being a living temple, divided into 7 major focal points. Its head being to the north here, its body being to the south, and its spine is marked by the Nile River. The 7 great centers established along with the Nile mark the 7 major focal points of energy, or chakras, in the human body, which manifest physically as certain endocrine glands, ganglia and plexuses, and groups of organs that serve particular functions that can be identified in the 7 main groups. Like all temples, the land temple, it is patterned upon an internal archetype, which is exquisitely expressed in the human form of man himself, which is the crowning achievement of nature. And each of the great centers had teachings concerning life and the particular functions, each of these great centers, that the center played in Egypt. So these principles, of which were identified and referred to as nectars, as I said earlier, and those that were initiated into and worked in these centers were serving the purpose of that center with respect to its role in the whole kingdom of Egypt. Okay? So some of you may be justifiably asking at this point, so Henry, what does this have to do with me and finding my own soul's purpose? Stick with me and follow the line of reasoning coming up, and we'll get to that, okay? You see, it is my firm belief, along with many others out there who are working feverishly to transform this bio-socioeconomic environment that we're in, that nothing happens in this world by accident. There's certainly no debate that we are currently living in what can be termed turbulent times, right? And so it is this very reason that I feel individuals like yourself are being drawn and called forward with a new sense of responsibility to offer urgent solutions to the pressing needs and problems of the world. It's no secret that humanity is crying out for new thought leaders to offer solutions to the plethora of age-old challenges and problems. But the question remains, where will these new thought leaders come from? And where will this new knowledge come from? There's a biblical saying that paraphrase states that you should not pour new wine into old wineskins, for they will burst. You should instead pour new wine into new wineskins, then they are both preserved. So we must introduce new thoughts, new thinking, and new models for success. But again, the question is posed, where does this new thought come from? Now I'm going to pause on this slide because this slide speaks to why we need new thought and what is going on. I'll call this the amazing paradox of innovation. Over here to my right, basically it says none of these 6 companies existed 20 years ago. And here's the paradox. One of the companies, the fastest growing television network, has no cables, lays no cable. The most valuable photo company sells no cameras, Instagram. The most popular media provider creates no content, Facebook. The largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. And the world's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. So you see, this is the new thought. This is the old thought is that technology killed the old businesses, where actually we look over here and says Uber didn't kill the taxi business, limited access and fare control did, and on and on. So here's the thing. Paradoxically, asking where does this new thought come from? Paradoxically, in this case, it so happens that the answers we seek are found in teachings from ancient times and in what I refer to as lost knowledge. And we'll come back to this lost knowledge a little later in the talk. But for now, suffice it to say that the foundation of my work with clients and their business is based on primordial knowledge that goes back thousands of years ago within the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, which had enfolded within their secret scrolls some very ancient laws and principles of nature. It was believed by many that these secrets and laws and principles were lost to antiquity. However, it's a known fact that they were in fact preserved, safeguarded, and entrusted to individuals who were dedicated to putting them into the service of humanity at the appropriate times that they were most desperately needed. These laws and principles have subsequently made their way through the ages and have been adopted by various spiritual leaders, sages, and philosophers alike. They've ultimately made their way into all of the world religions and spiritual practices, and are eventually adopted into our modern age by great thinkers such as Carl Jung, Abraham Maslow, Arthur M. Young, and a host of others. Hidden in plain sight, they are thus available for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. In fact, the foundational teachings of all of the great world progressive movements and movements that liberate humanity, promulgated by such leaders as Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, and the founding fathers and mothers of America and many others, have as their underlying premise these great laws and principles of nature. So let's jump right in and talk about a few of these laws and principles. The first one that I'd like to bring to your attention is what is referred to as the principle of as above, so below. This principle states that all those things that we experience as phenomena on the physical plane is a mirror of that which first exists on the invisible spiritual plane. I'll repeat. All those things that we experience as phenomena on the physical plane is a mirror of that which first exists in the invisible spiritual plane. So, in other words, everything has this genesis first in thought. And in this case, in what is known as divine thought. Cosmic consciousness, or what many refer to as the mind of the divine creator, or for many simply the mind of God. The true importance of this principle is that it indicates that we as humans can, with only our mind, attune to and tap into the universal consciousness of the divine mind and envision solutions to the myriad needs and pressing problems of our biosocioeconomic environment. This principle also leads us to one of our first laws, that which I call the law of correspondence. Now, the importance of this law is that it embodies the proof that there is a direct correspondence between the principles of nature and that of human nature, which since we humans are indeed a part of nature. In fact, modern quantum physicists have now discovered and provided what they call the entanglement theory, or quantum entanglement, which is the very essence of this law of correspondence. This theory simply states that a microscopic particle in one location of a certain essence is affected and reacts to another like particle located across great distances when that particle is excited or affected by some outside force, and thus they are deemed entangled. It's sort of like a parent feeling the emotional pain of their child if they are experiencing a great deal of suffering, or identical twins feeling and sensing the other's thoughts at a distance. So it's with this premise that we establish the correspondence of certain processes in nature with certain aspects of the human soul, reflected within our unconscious mind, as what the late Carl Jung and other noted scholars referred to as archetypes. Jung, the eminent Swiss psychiatrist and psychotherapist who founded analytical psychology and who was deemed by many as one of the founding fathers of modern psychology, also spent time studying the teachings of ancient Egypt and came away with the theory that is held to this day, that humanity shares a collective soul, and various aspects of this collective soul is reflected in patterns within each individual as specific soul or personality types with certain propensities and attributes that have been at the basis of our consciousness for millions of years. So the word archetypes comes from the Greek word arche, meaning first, primary, and typos, meaning model or image or type. So then archetypes are primordial mental images inherited from our earliest human ancestors, from ancient to modern times and subsequent culture, that are innate to our collective unconscious, which also is where our basic human instincts are found. Now, so these instincts or attributes can further be analyzed, predicted, and mapped to give us tremendous insight into the functioning of the human mind and the human psyche. So we'll later explain how this relates to each individual's soul's code and can be used to discern a person's life purpose or calling in life, or in other words, the unique signature of each person's soul. The next principle involved comes from a not so ancient text, however ancient wisdom nevertheless. Much of the research that I've done comes from a book written during the 40s by a scholar by the name of Rodney Collins. Now, Collins was a student of P.D. Ouspensky, who himself was a student of George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, or as he was affectionately known by his disciples simply as Gurdjieff. This is the principle of the 7 processes in nature, and where I draw my source material to arrive at the 7 primary archetype correspondences, which reveal subsequently the 70 plus discovered divine birth gifts. So, and now to explain the word process discussed in this context. So a process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. In addition, it is a series of changes that happen naturally or a natural phenomenon marked by a gradual change that leads toward a particular result, such as the process of growth. And lastly, a process can be a continuing natural or biological activity or function, such as the life process of breathing or many other metabolic processes in the body. As mentioned earlier, human beings have an innate biosocial signature. In other words, attributes that align with the aforementioned 7 fundamental processes in nature. This biosocial signature determines what it is that naturally inspires, excites, motivates, and energizes us. In other words, our passions. It is what is also causes us to act in the best intention towards the whole of humanity or the biosocioeconomic environment. Now, I refer to these biological signatures as innate birth gifts. They're called innate birth gifts because they are inherent within each human being at birth and manifest instinctively given certain circumstances. They're also directly associated with the aforementioned archetypes of the collective unconscious. For instance, I've identified 7 primary archetypes, each associated with 7 additional sub-archetypes for a total of 49 creation archetypes. Okay? This combined with the archetype of the divine collective consciousness or the universal mind yields a total of 50 archetypes or 50 attributes of the soul with 50 unique signatures. So this sort of reminds us of our 50 United States, with each of them having their very own signature, or in the ancient teachings of the Kabbalah as the 50 gates of Bina, which are themselves understood to be a map of the higher states of understanding or intelligence, or higher, or simply just the higher self, or a map of the path to the soul. As an example of the archetypes and their associated gifts, I'll mention the 7 primary archetypes along with the dominant gifts that each of the archetypes embody, and I'll start with the seer. And what I'll do with the seer is I'll give an extensive extensive information on that regarding its attributes. Then I'll briefly cover the remaining 6, which are the sage, the warrior. So listen carefully to see if you hear your own self mentioned in these archetypes, because these are all of these in some combinations are found within all of us. So I'm going to read these directly. You'll see them on the screen, but I'm going to read them directly from the report here. So a seer is a wise person endowed with profound and moral and spiritual insight that possesses the intuitive ability to discern future events, circumstances, and plans with imagination and keen foresight. A seer has, as its associate archetypes, a visionary, innovator, historian, pioneer, explorer. One of the seer's primary gift is that of vision, but the seer also has other gifts such as that of creation, enterprise, justice, fortitude. The seer is recognized by its ability to see the future with a sense of optimism, a prophetic mind with an understanding of future needs of others, a just personality with keen awareness and circumspection, talent for envisioning that which has not been thought of prior. What the seer symbolizes vision and creation, insight and innovation, inspiration and new paradigms, forecasting and prognostication. The corresponding cosmic processes of the seer are visioning, intuition, sensing, and discernment. So in this process, visioning precedes creation. The creation is embodied in the mind of the creator. In the cosmic sense, this was symbolized as the Word, the divine mind, God. This process precedes all other processes for without it, there would be no material form for the manifestation of the other processes to work on. In the practical sense, this is the meditation process called mental creation. And so the corresponding planetary influence is that of the sun, the life-giving principle. Within the Maslow's hierarchy of needs correspondences, we find the seer in the area at the level of transcendence, and I'll show you that a little later on, which basically means they're in service to others. The principle of our life work, spiritual equilibrium achieving our magnum opus. Typically, the seer is found in corporate function in the position of the executive or in morals or ethics. And these are some legendary figures that are typically associated with the seer, Joseph, son of Jacob, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, and some other. The Egyptian Neter Ra, which is the cosmic principle of creation, it personifies the primordial cosmic creation impulse is the Neter that basically personifies the seer. That the sage is a person possessing profound wisdom, gained through reflection, study, and judgment and experience. The sage struts through appearances and illusions to find the truth. The sage values knowledge for its own sake and uses knowledge and wisdom to help others and not as a means of control. Disillusionment, detachment, and cynicism are dangerous for this particular archetype if they fall into a relativistic mindset. The associate archetypes of the sage are the scribe, the teacher, the scout, the networker, the judge, the guide, and so on. The primary innate gift of the sage is that of wisdom, but then there's generosity, gentility, integrity, serenity, counsel, discretion. The sage is recognized by its ability to give and nurture life and provide guidance for growth. A wise mind with a prudent and gentle approach to things. A generous and patient personality with temperance and integrity. Talent for developing and strengthening others in order to flourish and be successful. The sage symbolizes wisdom and nourishing, the passive maternal aspect, fertility and growth, intuition, feelings and emotions. And the Egyptian Neter that personifies the seer is that of Isis or Set. And as I said, I'm going to go through these others relatively fast because if you continue the work with me, you'll come across these again during the discovery process and with the reports that are generated with that. So the warrior, everybody knows the warrior as a person who demonstrates great vigor and courage and skill in the theater of battle. The primary gift of the warrior is that of courage, but the warrior also embodies the gift of constancy, of devotion, of focus, of discipline, of resolve, of protectorship, and vigilance. The warrior is recognized by its ability to demonstrate focus, discipline, and courage at all times. A resolved personality exhibiting vigilance and constancy, talent for protecting and defending those that can't defend themselves. Now, the interesting thing about the warrior archetypes run the risk of seeing violence to others or to oneself as the answer to all problems as they move to the less evolved aspect of the warrior. And then you have the gift of the scholar, whose primary gift is that of gnosis, who has other gifts such as reform, oration, credibility, rhetoric. And it's the Neter that represents the scholar is that of Anubis, which is my favorite one. Anubis embodies the cosmic principle of transmutation. And I guess I'm not I'm not forwarding this, am I? The cosmic principle of transmutation, or recreation or resurrection, made manifest after many trials or of shadows and darkness in the symbolic underworld, or the world of the egos and illusion. And then we have the archetype of the king, whose primary gift is that of excellence, but also embodies that of nobility, of virtue, humanity. The king is recognized by potential excellence and nobility, so on and so forth. And the last archetype is that of the seven primaries, that of the servant, whose primary gift is that of altruism, but also has the gift of compassion, the gift of supportiveness, the gift of empathy, enthusiasm, and so on. So, I'm sorry, that's the next to that. The last archetype is that of the artisan, whose primary gift is that of, interestingly enough, mysticism, but also has the gift of art, the gift of cheer, the gift of geometry, of arithmetic. So that pretty much encapsulates the seven primary archetypes and some of their attributes, and along with their associate archetypes. As I mentioned, all of these seven basic archetypes each have seven associate archetypes, or a total of 49, plus the universal, which makes 50. And lastly, each one of them embodies a set of 10, as I mentioned, innate gifts assigned to them, for a total of 70 assigned to the seven creation archetypes. So, faced with the multitude of circumstances and of changing nature, causes various combinations of these archetypes to be invoked, awakened, or activated in an individual at any given period of their life. And I think a similar question was asked earlier. However, it's generally the case that there are a few primary innate archetypes that are more fixed, stable, and dominant within each person, starting from birth, that I refer to as their ascendant archetypes. So my theory is that we each embody 3 ascendant archetypes, which are each endowed with specific gifts that manifest in each of us at birth, and 4 ancillary archetypes that change and fluctuate under various circumstances and conditions. Okay, so to assist in revealing your soul or life purpose, we proceed with a dialogue in the form of an assessment by asking you a series of questions about your feelings, your opinions, or your reactions to certain life situations and circumstances, to develop and map a baseline of how you innately respond to or are activated to action by a given set of conditions or circumstances around you. And this basically then provides you with clarity. And once we have some clarity, and we're able to reveal how you are best suited to provide what I call a service, what I call a service or a product, a social value proposition. I'm sorry. You're able to provide a service or product by discovering your social value proposition that meets the various needs and solves the many problems of humanity and our biosocioeconomic world that we are stewards of. We then integrate this with specific human needs based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. And lastly, once we determine what particular needs area you are more drawn to work within, we then are able to determine by way of assessment which area of work, and we base this on the 12 sector model, that you are more drawn to working within in order to accomplish your life's purpose. And so completing this process gets you one step closer to finding what it is that you are passionate about and with regard to your life or soul's purpose. And this leads us, after a bit more discussion, eventually to finding your aha moment that we mentioned earlier. And from that point, we have a few options. We can monetize that aha moment into a business model to form a business enterprise around the model. And then we organize, build, and grow that business enterprise into a purposeful, profitable, and heart-centered business. Or one can take this newfound information and begin a new chapter on your new chosen life path forward. And lastly, this newfound insight could be used to refine or enhance an existing social or business enterprise. So those are the options for finding that aha moment. And I'm going to wrap it up now. We're going to go into questions and answers, but I'm going to let me mention the offer briefly here. There we go. So what I'm going to do is, I thought I had it up there. So I'll call it out. If you have something to write with, just jot down my email, and it's hshelton. That's H as in Henry, Shelton at IFGT, Institute for Global Transformation. And I know I had that slide up there. And send me an email and tell me that, Henry, I'm ready to move forward. And what I'll do is send you a link to my calendar, and we could begin that dialogue. And also I'll send you a link to, there it is. There we go. Also, so yeah, send me an email with the subject line, Henry, I'm ready to start the dialogue. And I'll send you a link to two things, my calendar, so we can set up a time that works for you. And second, I will send you a link to the assessment, either the digital assessment, or we may proceed with the manual one. So that's it. That's the presentation. So I'm going to, Denise, open the floor up to question and answers. So love your presentation, Henry. Questions. Does your assessment give a combination of archetypes? So Diane, would you like to engage that? Would you like for to get online or answer that? So combination, does your assessment give a combination? So what you end up with by taking the assessment, you will end up with 3 primary archetypes, which gives you some information about the attributes that you identify and resonate with. And so those will be your 3 primary, and basically what they are meant to reveal are the birth gifts inherent with those archetypes. So I don't know if that's what you mean by combination of archetypes. Diane saying I can come online with you. So let's see here. There you go. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Henry. Thank you so
much.
much. Great. That was fascinating. Loved it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you've certainly done a lot of research, and I love I love mysticism. And anyway, but so getting to modern times, the archetypes, because when I hear it, that's why I asked you the question. I think, oh, well, don't we all have a little bit of each one? And I get the idea. I think what you're saying is if you hone in, get it down to 3, that it'll just give you better laser focus. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so the underlying secret that Jung discovered, Denise, is that we all embody the sum total of all of the archetypes within us. They just began to manifest at different phases of our life, depending on our states, our relative state of consciousness at that time in our life. So I think the question was asked earlier online, will your purpose change over time, or can it change your life purpose? And various circumstances does what I call activate certain aspects of your personality, of your soul personality, which activates that particular archetype. So I just talked about the 50 creative archetypes. If we do further research, we'll find that there's probably closer to 144 archetypes. Some of those are shadow archetypes, but nevertheless, and I'll give an example. This was mentioned recently at a workshop I went to, the archetype of the psychopath. And the psychopath is an archetype that could show up. And the question is, when it shows up, how did it show up? Did we invite it? Or do we support it? And the psychopath could stay around and create. If we look back at history, the sociopath could create some tremendous harm on humanity. And short of calling any names, I'm just saying that the psychopath archetype could show up. So, not sure if that answers your question completely.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I didn't know someone had asked you that about as things evolve in the world and as we evolve, I guess the focus is different. But let's say I have one other question, and thank you for answering everything. Have you looked at this applied to humanity as one collective whole, in addition to as individuals, like right now, let's say in this great transition and the coronavirus, activating a lot of consciousness and shifts in the structures of society, that you could look at it through your system and see what's happening with humanity as a whole?
So I kind of gave you a hint when I was talking, and I want to be careful of the words of my choice of words, but this is just my personal theory, is that you can see the archetypes showing up in the collective of humanity as we speak. What I'm trying to encourage, Diane, with my work is for us to willfully and consciously activate the archetypes that we want to show up. In other words, become more conscious of our own soul personality and what we have to offer to humanity now. And we have to make a willful and deliberate decision to do that. And that comes with getting clarity on who you are. So the archetypes are just out there. All of them are manifested in individuals. And like you said, if you're asking me, is there one collective archetype that's dominating the, let's say, trajectory of humanity right now? I'd be hard pressed to give you one. But if you have an opinion, an insight, feel free to share. I have a couple of more questions. If you have an insight, feel free to share.
Well, I wouldn't. I'd have to think about it a little.
Okay.
But please, thank you for the discussion and for answering my questions. And yes, please do answer the other questions.
Thank you for your question, Diane. I have Sandra Moore has a question, Michael Johnson, and these are in the chat box. I'll have to go to the others. So let me go to Sandra. And Sandra, I'm clicking answer live. So let me get to my other screen. 1 second. And Denise, if you have any access to, there we go, participants.
Henry, this is Denise. The two questions that you see in the Q&A from both Sandra and Michael, feel free to answer live. You don't necessarily have to put them on audio to engage live like you did, Diane. You can feel free to just feel those questions yourself.
Okay, so Sandra's question is, it seems like we have to be so many different things in the course of our day. How do we stay centered? Yeah, that's a great question, Sandra. And so one of the ways of staying centered, Sandra, and I think you and I had a brief chat, we met some on LinkedIn, but one of the ways of staying centered is, again, having that clarity around who you are and what purpose are you here for? This helps to cut down a lot of distractions because, and of course, we have our ancillary responsibilities, family responsibilities, but the overarching purpose for why we're here helps keep us centered, and it's the focal point for all of our other work. In other words, whatever my business will reflect what my life's purpose is. The organizations I involve myself with, the friends I involve myself with, these things will resonate or not resonate with me through the course of the day. Certain circumstances, phone calls, emails, shows on TV, but they call it binge watching. Some of these things will either resonate or not resonate with me, depending on what my purpose and focus is. So that's one way. And if you want to have a follow-on question, go ahead and post that. I'm going to proceed to Michael Johnson's question. Thank you for the insights. So when using these techniques, can one find their purpose and then applying something tangible? Can one find their purpose, and how then apply to something tangible? How long does the process take? And I mentioned this to Mary Ann when we first talked, and as much as we mentioned that this call is about discovering life purpose, certainly you're not going to do that at the end of this call. So as I mentioned, the process is about starting a dialogue. Once you do the assessment, as I said, it's like someone, your higher self, asking you. That question went away, so I'm assuming, well, let me just keep talking. It's like your higher self asking you certain questions and you answering them to yourself. That's what the assessment about. And once you answer those questions that best resonate with your answer, again, the scores reveal based on you self-report this, what it is that you most resonate, what situation, what functions in life you most resonate with. And as far as how long does it take, I've worked with individuals that have that aha moment in the first, after taking the assessment. I've had individuals tell me that they got insight just from taking the assessment itself and the subsequent report that comes along with that. I've had individuals who I've had to sit down with. We have a consultation period. Maybe after the first consultation period, maybe after the second. I've have individuals I work with for a month, and I have a 30-day program that I go through with. But typically before 30 days, and I've had situations where a client walk away after 30 days and say, I'm still not there. And just, I've had situations where maybe a year later, the light bulb goes on, and then that person or client comes back to me, and we're moving on to the next part of the process as far as turning that life purpose or that aha moment into a business service proposition. So I just had something like that happen recently that I'm excited about.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I see here we've got one last comment from Lyrita saying, love your exploration into this work. It is quite interesting and unique. Thank you. Thank you, Lyrita. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your interaction with Henry. Really appreciate your patience with us as through the technology hiccups. And again, if you want to find out more about Henry's work, don't hesitate to go to www.henryshelton.com. If you want to find out more information about the Institute for Global Transformation, you could go to www.ifgt.net. Thank you so much, everyone.